All right, let's take a look at just one single day on planet Earth, February 8th, 2026. And what a day it was. You've got these incredible contrasts, right? On one side, the quiet, orderly process of voting, and on the other, the complete chaos of violence. So let's dive right in. Neural News Hub really hit the nail on the head here. They called it a major day for global democracy and diplomacy. And that's exactly the tension we're going to explore. It's like this constant push and pull between the structured, almost predictable world of democracy and the total high-wire act of global politics. It's order versus chaos, and we're about to see it all play out. So what's on the agenda? We've got it all. People casting ballots, super tense border talks, unfortunately some devastating bombings, but also some pretty amazing breakthroughs in both sports and politics. It really is a snapshot of our world in all its complicated glory. Okay, let's start with the more orderly side of things. We're talking about the power of the polls, where millions of people all over the world are making their voices heard. They're calling it Super Sunday for a reason. You've got 3 huge elections happening all at once. Over in Japan, a snap general election. In Thailand, a really tight general election. And then in Portugal, it's the final round, the runoff for their next president.
Get this. In Tokyo, there's a heavy snowfall, but that is not stopping voters. They're still heading to the polls. See, Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi called this snap election because she wants a strong mandate. And it looks like a little snow isn't going to stop people from weighing in.
Meanwhile, the stakes are just as high in other places. Thailand? It's a total nail-biter. You've got reformist versus conservative parties, and they're both scrambling to see who can form a government. And then you jump over to Portugal, where the socialist candidate Antonio José Seguro is the favorite in this final runoff against a populist challenger. So yeah, 3 countries, 3 totally different democratic dramas playing out. All right, so from the predictable structure of elections, we're going to pivot. We're heading into the much more fragile, much more tense world of international diplomacy. And here, well, the outcomes are anything but certain. But let's start with what could be a real glimmer of hope. Word is the U.S. is pushing hard for a peace agreement in Ukraine with an ambitious deadline of June 2026. President Zelenskyy has confirmed this. It's all part of these Board of Peace initiatives, these big international efforts to finally get a lasting ceasefire. And to give you some perspective on why this is so huge, we're talking about a conflict that's been going on for over 1,400 days. 1,400. So the stakes are just immense. Any little bit of progress here is absolutely monumental. But of course, diplomacy is never that simple, right? For every door that seems to be opening, like in Ukraine, another one slams shut. Talks between the U.S. and Iran have just hit a massive roadblock. A key demand from the U.S. was just flat out rejected, and now the whole process in Oman is completely stalled.
And Iran's foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, he didn't mince words. Iran's missile program is non-negotiable. I mean, that's about as clear as it gets. It's a really hard line, and it leaves basically zero room for compromise. The talks are at a dead end.
So how did the U.S. respond to this deadlock? With a very powerful, very symbolic move. Negotiators were reportedly rushed right from the talks onto the USS Abraham Lincoln, a U.S. aircraft carrier. That is not a subtle message. It's a major show of force, and it tells you just how much tensions are cranking up. And this is where the day takes a much darker turn, because this is what happens when diplomacy fails, when security just completely breaks down. 36. Just let that number sink in for a second. That's how many people lost their lives in a suicide bombing at a mosque in Islamabad. It's just a devastating, tragic number. So let's break down how this awful event unfolded. First, you have the attack itself, a suicide bombing. Almost immediately, the Islamic State, IS, claims responsibility. But then the fallout gets political, fast. Pakistan starts pointing fingers, alleging India was involved, a claim that India's Ministry of External Affairs officially snubbed. So now you've got this layer of diplomatic tension piled right on top of an already horrific tragedy. And believe it or not, at the same time, something else terrible was happening, this time in Ufa, Russia. A really brutal knife attack at a university. Several people were injured, and this story has an international angle too. 4 of the victims were students from India. And here's the most chilling part. Reports are saying the attacker actually drew Nazi symbols on a wall, using the victim's blood. It's just a horrific detail, and as you can imagine, it's kicked off a major diplomatic inquiry. And yet, even on a day filled with so much tension and tragedy, the world does keep spinning, life goes on. So for this last part, we're going to look at stories of resilience, of recovery, and, yeah, even a little bit of good old-fashioned rivalry. Let's start with some genuinely good news out of Lebanon. After a really long stretch of instability, they have officially formed a new government. The new prime minister is Nawaf Salam, and his mission is to get the economy back on track and start rebuilding. It's a real sign of hope. And on a completely different note, over in Italy, it's a time for celebration. The 2026 Winter Olympics are in full swing in Milan and Cortina. And the big story, the one everyone is talking about, the return of an absolute legend. American skier Lindsey Vonn is back on the slopes. Remember those stalled talks we talked about earlier? Well, not all diplomacy hit a wall. In Malaysia, India's Prime Minister Modi was visiting, and he delivered a really strong anti-terrorism message. But it was more than just words. The two countries signed 11 different agreements, including a huge deal on semiconductors. It just goes to show you, there's another way to do things. And this is where the contrasts of the day just get so stark. Look at this. In the world of sports, tensions between India and Pakistan are so high that the International Cricket Council is literally in crisis talks trying to stop a match boycott. And at the exact same time, in the world of politics, India is over in Malaysia signing 11 successful agreements. It's just wild. And for our last story of the day, it's a reminder that the very institutions that report on all this global chaos aren't immune to it themselves. Will Levis, the CEO of the Washington Post, just resigned. He was only there for 2 years, and it was a rocky tenure, to say the least. Lots of staff criticism, big layoffs. This is a huge shakeup for one of the most important newspapers in the world. So we end up right back where we started. It's just one day. But in that one day, we've seen it all. Ballots and bombs, the clean, orderly lines of democracy, and the messy, brutal chaos of terrorism, the high-stakes tension of diplomacy, and the incredible resilience of people just trying to live their lives. And it really leaves you with a big question, doesn't it? When you look at this snapshot of our world, which force is going to win out, order or chaos? Which one will define our future?